Happy Friday. We made it through another week and we are almost done with the material for this course. So as a reminder, we finished up chapter 7 on Wednesday with a little bit about some diseases, especially some developmental disorders. And then I asked you guys to work on your case study. We're going to be now starting our last chapter, which is chapter 8 on the senses. We originally, back in January, when I gave you guys the syllabus, we're going to cover chapters 1 through 9 because of all of the chaos. I've cut that last chapter. So chapter 8 will be our last chapter. So we'll do chapter 8. You'll have a unit test on chapter 7 and 8. You'll have respite, a short one, and then you'll take a cumulative final. And I'll go into some more details about those two exams a little bit later. Okay, I'm going to start by showing you a few things on your Canvas site that I want you to be aware of. So again, we have those last few assignments for chapter 7 that are due today and over the weekend. So we've got nervous system questions. You have to participate in the discussion board again, so you have to answer questions, part 3, as well as something you found interesting for week 4. We have that case study due at midnight, so that again, read through the case study, type up your responses, submit that, and then your cranial nerve worksheet is just a table with the 12 cranial nerves. You tell me what they are and what they do. For the senses, we don't have a lot of activities. I have some questions that I posted for discussion. Again, there'll be next week's discussion board. On the horizon, you've got some midterm 3 again coming up. The thing I want to show you with the senses is under pages. You've got some videos here that I'm going to be talking about. So what it's like to be colorblind, how do we smell, and a short video on a patient who has a cochlear implant, which I think is helpful. So take a look at those when you get the chance. And now I'm going to switch gears and start chapter 8. Okay. So, as always, the chat is open if you have questions that you need answered. But starting here with chapter 8, we have got our special senses. So we're going to talk about eyes and vision, hearing and balance, which is in our inner ear, smell, taste, and then we'll end with some development. The learning objectives for this first part. So we want to define what is a special sense. We want to identify the structures in your eye and detail their function. Remember, we abbreviate function as FX. We'll talk about some different cells in your retina called rods and cones and what they do and how they're different. We'll trace the path of light through the eye to the retina and then that information back to the visual cortex. And we'll describe how images are formed in the retina, and we'll talk about eye reflexes. Okay, let's first start by talking about our senses. So most people learned about what are your senses back in elementary school, I believe. And most of the senses that you learned about are what we call special senses, which are senses that have a specialized organ. The one sense that is not a special sense is touch, and that's because touch is kind of localized all over the place. So you have touch receptors all over your body. Those make up a lot of that sensory input that we talked about. And so that, because it's not localized to one region, is not considered a special sense. The others are. So vision is localized to the eye, taste to the tongue, smell in the nose, and hearing and balance are localized in the inner ear. The new one to you might be balance. Balance is considered a special sense, and that's because it has a function in that organ, that inner ear organ. So we're going to now talk about most of these. We'll focus most of our attention on the eyes and the ears, but at the end, we'll briefly talk about the other two special senses. Okay. So let's first look at the eye as you see it. So this is a person's eye, as you can tell. You've got a few key structures that you can see just by looking at the eye. The first is that black circle in the middle, that's the pupil. That is going to be the opening that light is going to pass through. Next is the colored region around it. Everyone has different colors to their eye. This is the iris, that color region, and it's protected by a thin layer that you can't see, a clear layer called our cornea. The white at your eye we call sclera, and that is covered in a fluid called conjunctiva. So a lot of terms we gotta know. We gotta know about pupil, iris, sclera, conjunctiva. The meeting points of your eyes, where it comes together, we call those the medial and lateral commissure. Medial on the medial side, lateral on the lateral side. And then you also can see some structures like the eyelid and the eyelashes, which have a protective function. So our eye needs to maintain a moist environment. It has to be wet. And that is done through our lacrimal gland, which is going to be on the corner, the upper corner of your eye. So the lacrimal gland is going to release tears that are going to cover the surface of your eye. So this picture is showing here the eye with the eyelids closed. So the eyelid on the top and bottom meeting together with some little eyelashes there. And the lacrimal gland is making tears that are coming down and bathing that conjunctiva, that fluid layer on the top. And the tears are going to actually cross over your eye. So the lacrimal gland is located on that lateral upper corner, and it's going to make tears that are going to flow across the eye, and they'll drain into our lacrimal sac, which will form a nasolacrimal duct, so a connection duct between the eye and the nose, and will eventually drain into the nasal cavity, into the nostril. This is why when you cry a lot, if you're like really sobbing, you're going to also get really snotty. So all that liquid eventually is going to come into your nose because we have this connection, this nasolacrimal duct connecting our eyes to our nose. Let's come back. We're going to come to this picture over and over and over again when we talk about the eye and how we see. And this is showing you the inside anatomy of the eye. So this is if you take a sagittal slice of the eye and you are looking, this is the front of your face and this is the back here. Okay, so we're going to talk about all of these structures and we're going to trace the path of light through these structures. What I want you to remember when we talk about the anatomy of the eye is that the eye, or that light rather, remember your physics, light is a wave. So if we're standing here, we have light waves coming all around us at 360 degrees. And we need all of those light waves to be processed, or the light waves that we can see, they're going to need to be processed by our brain. So we need structures that are going to take in those waves, that are then going to focus them, and then are then going to process them. So we need structures to take in the light, focus the light, and process the light. And you can think of the eye as like a camera. So this would be like a camera at the front. If you were to look at it, a camera also has an opening for the light to come in. It has a lens, right, that focuses light. And it has a spot in the back of the camera. In old-fashioned cameras, that's where the film lived. Now in digital cameras, you've got like a microchip that's in the back. The same is true for our eye. We have structures in the front that are going to take in light. We have structure in the middle that's going to focus the light. And then we've got structures in the back that are going to process the light. Take in, focus, process. In a camera, also in our eyeball. So we'll go through and we'll talk about how each of these structures work. But you want to keep in mind that light waves are coming in, and they're going to come in through the opening of our eye, through that pupil. They're going to be focused by our lens to the back of our eye, which has our retina, and the retina is going to process that visual information. So that is the gross overview of the path of light here. We'll get into some more detail. Okay, let's talk now about the structures of the eye. So your eye is like a balloon that is like a water balloon. It's got fluid on the inside and it has 3 layers on the outside. And the outer layer, we call the fibrous layer. And the fibrous layer is mainly made up of your sclera, which is that whiteness of your eyes. So the white of your eyes is your sclera, and that actually goes all the way around your eye. And it serves a protective function. So it's going to keep the other layers safe. In the front part of your eye, the part that's open, you also have your cornea. So your cornea is covering the iris and the pupil, so the colored part of your eye and that black circle. And it's a clear layer that's also full of nerve endings. So if you've ever gotten a corneal abrasion, I got one once, very painful because of all that sensation there in your cornea. Moving to our middle layer, we have our vascular layer. The vascular layer is mainly made up of something called the choroid, which is a pigmented, blood-rich region. So it's got lots and lots of blood vessels, giving all the nutrients your eye needs and taking away waste products like vasculature does. And it also has, we also find the muscles in this region. So the muscles are going to help change the size of your pupil, dilate, making it bigger, constricting it, making it smaller. Everyone knows those terms, right? Dilate, big, constrict, small. And it has muscles like the ciliary body, which are going to help move your lens. So the ciliary body are the muscles that are going to move your lens to help you focus light in the same way you would move that lens in a camera to help focus your camera. The iris, again, is that color region of your eye, and it controls the opening here of your pupil. Okay, so the pupil is what's going to change shape to allow light. So I want you to think about, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but what circumstances would you need a big pupil, a big opening, lots of light coming through, and what circumstances would you need a small pupil, not a lot of light coming through? So your pupil is going to change shape to help regulate the amount of light passing into your eye. The pupil is going to be either big to allow a lot of light, we say it's dilated, or constricted, small, to allow not a lot of light. The deepest layer in the wall of your eye is your sensory layer. And your sensory layer is specifically in the back is your retina. And your retina has a pigmented and a neural layer to it. The retina is going to be where the cells that pick up, that detect light are located. So like in a camera, the light goes all the way back to the back of the camera where the microchip or the film is located. In your eye, light is going to pass from that lens. It's going to be focused and go all the way to the back of your eye. So in the very back of your eye, that is where the receptors are that respond to light. Retina responds to light. And they're going to send out their axons in a nerve called your optic nerve. You remember it's one of your cranial nerves. And your optic nerve leaves your eye, and the area that it leaves the eye is called your optic disc. And this is your blind spot. And that's because that spot where the optic nerve leaves, there are no photoreceptors. There's no ability for you to determine what is happening. So you have a very, very small blind spot where your optic nerve exits your eye. Okay. Let's now talk about that retina and the neurons in your retina. So your retina, again, is located in the very back of your eye, and light is going to pass from your lens. It's going to move through the fluid in that back part of your eye, and it's going to go all the way to the very back of your retina. So this picture here is showing you an eyeball, again, from a sagittal view, but in this case, the front of your eyeball here is to the right, and the back of the eyeball is to the left. And as light goes through, it's going to go to the very back of the retina. And in the very back of your retina, you have your photoreceptor cells. These are cells that are going to detect light, and they're going to turn the wave of light into an electrical chemical signal, into an action potential. And you have two flavors of photoreceptors, rods and cones. Rods see black and white, so they see all those shades of gray, and they're located mainly in your periphery. You use your rods a lot for your night vision. So if you've ever been driving at night, you notice that the colors are kind of hard to see, and really you're just seeing black and white things, right? That's your rods. So your rods are located all over. There are a lot of them in your periphery. You use them to see black and white, and you use them at night. Your cones, however, are for what you see color. So see cone, see color. They're located in the center of your eye. And these are the ones that help you see fine details as well as color. So you use your cones in bright light. They allow you to see very minute detail if your eyes are working correctly or you got on your glasses. And the area of greatest acuity, so your best vision, comes in the very center of your eye. We call that your fovea centralis. This is why if you hear a noise like off to the side, you're going to turn your head to look at it because you want to line up your fovea centralis with whatever is making that noise. So you want to line up the center of your vision with what's happening. That will allow you to see the very best. Now we have three different kinds of cones. We have blue cones, green cones, and red cones. Now I know primary school you learned about primary colors, about how the primary colors are blue, yellow, and red, not blue, green, and red. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not how your eye works. Your eye doesn't have a yellow cone. Yellow instead is a subtraction kind of between blue and green. Your eye has a blue cone, a green cone, and a red cone. And it's going to be able to determine the color based on the ratio of those cones. So something like purple is going to fire both your blue and your red cones, etc. Now, someone who is colorblind is going to have issues with one of their cones. Okay, so light comes to your eye. It passes through the pupil, which is that opening. It hits the lens. The lens is going to focus the light onto the back of your eye, onto the retina. The photoreceptors at the very back of the retina, the rods and the cones, are going to start an action potential because the stimulus, the thing that opens them up, the thing that depolarizes them, is light. Black and white light for rods, for cones. If it's a blue cone, blue light. If it's a green cone, green light. If it's a red cone, red light. That light is going to be the stimulus that depolarizes that photoreceptor. And it's going to shoot an action potential, and it will send that signal, right, that electrochemical signal to the next neuron in the chain, which is called a bipolar cell. So light is going to go all the way back. It's going to start an action potential in our photoreceptors, which is going to start an action potential in our bipolar cells, which will start an action potential in our ganglion cells. And the ganglion cells are what become the optic nerve. Now we call this an inside-out pattern because the information goes all the way to the back, all the way to the inside, and then moves forward. All the way to the back, moves forward. This is the spectrum of light that each cone picks up. So blue cones are going to get that purple to blue, green cones pick up green, red cones pick up red and yellow. And if you remember from physics, different colors have different wavelengths. What I linked down here and what I put in that Pages site on Canvas is a video about people who are colorblind. The most common color blindness is red color blindness. So people who have issues either with their red cones, or some people have green color blindness, they have issues with their green cones. And the video shows you what it's like to see from their eyes and what their vision is actually like being colorblind. So I highly recommend taking a look at that. Okay, this is another sagittal section of an eye. Again, we have the front section here, we got that lens, we have the back. What I want you to see now is that the eye, see, get it? What I want you to see with the eye is that it is not just 3 layers, but it is held in place by fluid. So we've got aqueous humor in the anterior part, in the front part, in front of the lens, and we've got vitreous humor behind the lens. And the lens is what separates those 2 parts, the front and the back. And again, that lens is the lens is to focus the light. So your lens in the middle here is held in place by your ciliary body, and it divides it into an aqueous segment in the front and a vitreous segment in the back. And we call this aqueous humor and vitreous humor. And it's the humor, it's that fluid that actually gives the eye its shape and helps the eye maintain something called its interocular pressure. Pressure in the eye. You want the pressure in the aqueous humor to be the same as the pressure in the vitreous humor so that it stays nice and round. At this point, you want to make sure you can draw an eye. Draw those different structures. Draw the layers that we talked about. Okay. I'm going to end today by talking about 2 diseases, 2 disorders. So the first is what happens if your lens gets hazy. So cataracts is when your lens starts to cloud over and it causes blindness. You're not able to see anymore. Light can go through the pupil, but it can't pass through the lens. The most common risk factor for cataracts is age. Older people are more at risk. But there are some lifestyle factors that contribute to a higher risk of developing cataracts. The first is diabetes. You want to watch your blood sugar. You also want to not smoke. And finally, you want to avoid looking at sunlight. So to do this, they recommend everyone when you're outside, you should wear sunglasses. In the same way that you put sunscreen on, you got to wear sunglasses. This is especially true for people who have lighter colored eyes. Your iris, that colored part, helps block some of the extra light from going and damaging your eye, the light that's not moving through your pupil. People who have darker colored eyes, you're naturally blocking some of that light. Lighter colored eyes, you block less light, so you need to wear sunglasses even more. But everyone can benefit from sunglasses. And finally, I want to talk about glaucoma. Glaucoma is caused when the pressure in the back part of your eye, the vitreous humor, is greater than the pressure in the front part of your eye, your aqueous humor. Normally, those pressures are equal, and your eye has a little canal where the fluid can flow from the vitreous part into the aqueous part and out. Now, in glaucoma, there is a blockage in that canal, and so the fluid in the vitreous humor is going to build. And that means that the vitreous pressure is going to be greater than the aqueous pressure. And the problem with this is that as the pressure builds, it can actually damage and cut off the optic nerve, and it can lead to blindness. So this is when they test you at the doctor's office, when the eye doctor, they'll puff like a little bit of air in your eye. They're measuring your interocular pressure. Okay. So today we talked about the eye. We went into some different structures of the eye. And we briefly talked a little bit about the path of light for the eye and some disorders for the eye. So I'm going to stop the recording there.